So my deep, deep, deep thanks to Sabrina, our fabulous board president, to Harold Levine, our vice president, and would the whole executive committee stand? The whole executive committee, and would the whole board of directors stand? Everyone on the current board of directors? It's hard and tough, but very meaningful work to run a synagogue, and I'm so grateful to all of the lay leaders who do so. So I want to let you in on a secret. I'm so happy to see Andy Cohen here, who's a beloved and longtime member. Andy just invited me to be on the show Monday night to be the bartender. It'll be my 7th time, but I said yes to Andy, so Monday night I'm going to be the bartender. What do you do after Kol Nidre, after all day of Yom Kippur, but to be the bartender on Andy's show? So it is my 7th time, Andy. I'm waiting for the jacket, you know. I'm so happy to see all of you here, and in honor of this being my 32nd Drashah, I thought I'd ask everybody what your favorite ones were, but then I realized that might be a little tough because you probably don't remember them. But people often say that they remember the joke I told the first Drashah, that in 1992, so I'm going to share it again just as like a throwback, because it has remained very popular with some folks. So some of you know that when I was in rabbinical school, I served as the student rabbi. Ruth Gursky remembers this from 32 years ago. Let's see who else remembers it. So when I was a student rabbi in Atlanta, Georgia, I was the rabbi for the LGBT synagogue there. And I became, anybody here from Atlanta? Yes, we've got a couple of CBST members who just moved to Atlanta. And at that time, when I was in rabbinical school, I was not out. It was a very different universe in the world in the mid-'80s. And the dean of the school asked me to go down to this gay synagogue to do their high holiday services because the person who was going to do it had just canceled, but I was asked 5 days before Rosh Hashanah, and they were paying nothing. So they would only offer one round-trip plane ride, so I had to go down before Rosh Hashanah and then stay till after Yom Kippur, paying nothing else. So I negotiated. I said, you know what? This was 1986 or 87. It was the middle of the AIDS crisis. I was feeling a lot of sense of obligation to those older LGBT folks. So I said, I'm going to do this as a way of expressing my gratitude to a generation that came before me. And so I said to her, I'll go down, but with one caveat. This is before the internet. Can we keep it confidential? Because at that time, if you worked at a gay synagogue or were known as being out as a gay person, you'd never get a job. It was considered suicide for your career. So I said, I'll do this. You know, this is 1986 or so. I'll do this, but let me do it on the side. No, we don't have to do any publicity. Is that okay? Fine, no publicity. There's no internet. One could think you could do something like that without everybody knowing. The next day, I'm in the library of the rabbinical school. For those of you who know RRC, it's laid out quite in an open format, and I'm sitting doing work in the library. How many people have heard this story? Just want to see. We got a bunch of people, but mostly not. Okay. It's okay if I tell it again? Okay, it's a good story. Harold says it's a good story. So I'm sitting in the library, and I hear Dee Myers, who is the beloved receptionist of the school, scream across the entire length of the building to the secretary at the dean's office. It's an open format, but she says, "What student is going to the gay synagogue in Atlanta, Georgia to be the rabbi?" And I'm sinking in my seat. And the other one says, "Sharon Kleinbaum." And Dee Meyer says, "Who?" And she says, "Sharon Kleinbaum." And Dee says, "Who?" She says, "Sharon K-L-E-I-N-B-A-U." So you get the idea. That's when I learned it wasn't really possible to be closeted and be a rabbi. It was there in Atlanta, Georgia, that I learned to love being a congregational rabbi. I had no idea before then that I would want to do it. I thought synagogue Judaism was dead in America, and that I couldn't imagine the vitality that I was looking for in a synagogue life. I found it at Beit Chaverim in Atlanta. I buried many of its members. The president there I buried from AIDS, and we were in the middle, of course, in the mid-'80s of this terrible tsunami which was destroying our world as we knew it. Anyway, at the Yom Kippur service there, I invited somebody to come up for a reading, and I'd spoken to her beforehand. She had never participated in a synagogue service in her life. She came from a very traditional background. Her name was Roz Sherman. And I said to her, Roz, listen, you can come up and do a reading during the service if you'd like to. She was very, very anxious about it, but she agreed. We got to that part of the service where it was her turn to come up and do a reading. Nothing, nada, no movement. So I, raised my eyebrows in a creative gesture to tell her it's her time. She's completely spacing out, completely not. And I go like this, nodding my head. And then I finally said, please, Roz. And the entire synagogue stood up. I said, that's right, Roz Sherman. I'm from the north. I don't say Roz, I say rise. So everybody looked at me. Please, Roz means to stand up in Atlanta, Georgia. Some years later, Roz Sherman's daughter actually came to CBST and told me how much it meant to her mother that she got a reading in the service. It totally didn't disturb her that I made the whole congregation stand. So you'll notice at CBST, to this day, I instruct the interns, we don't say, please rise, because I'm afraid I'll just crack up laughing anytime we say that. So we don't do that at CBST. So who remembers that from that? I told that joke. Mark Margolius remembers it. He's heard. Were you at RRC when that happened? Yes, you were at RRC when that famous story happened. So here I am, and as I said earlier, we have to hold a lot of things in our hands as we go through tonight's service, tomorrow's service, and this year. And I might say that the service of these 25 hours goes through all different ups and downs, colors of great intensity and then of somewhat slight boredom. And I promise you, if you hang in through as many of those curves, you'll find by the end a sense of enormous depth and wholeness. And it does take hanging in. That's true also of so many things in life, isn't it? It's that hanging in to not always needing things to be relevant and meaningful on the surface, but being prepared for the work it takes to get to the meaning that's often below the surface and takes some work. Hayom Harat Olam, we say on Rosh Hashanah, that today is the birthday of the world. And on Rosh Hashanah, I talked a lot about what the creation story means in the context of this renewal of ourselves. But today I want to focus a little bit on something that I'm thinking a lot about in this year, which is the Bein Hashmashot period. We're told that God created for 6 days of creation, and then God rested on the 7th day. And the question is, what happened in the twilight time between the 6 days of creation and the 7th day of rest? This twilight time, look, the whole show, Twilight Zone, was that for a reason. There's a sense of shimmering anxiety that comes with the time between day and night. The time that's known, of course, has become famous because of the work of 2 different anthropologists known as liminality. What is the time between things? What's the time that creates anxiety both in the day? So the time of twilight is a time of some anxiety. We're not really in the daytime, we're not really in the nighttime. Bein Hashmashot is sometimes translated as between the suns, Shemesh, meaning the sun of the daytime and the moon of night. But it's also translated as Shamash, meaning we feel a sense of rootedness in the daytime, and we feel a sense of rootedness maybe at the nighttime. But the time of being unrooted is this bein hashmashot, this time of feeling a lot of one foot in one place and one foot in another. There is a famous anthropologist I want to get the exact year he wrote. In 1909, Arnold van Gennep started this study in a very famous work called The Rites of Passage. And he talked about rituals that exist in every society around these moments of what he coined liminality, from the Latin word limen, for threshold. And he talked about that at these the moments, what religion and cultures do well is to create rituals around those moments of anxiety. Adolescence, we have a ritual that marks leaving childhood and entering adolescence. Marriage, leaving one state of being into another state of being. Divorce, having rituals around leaving one state of being in another state of being. Going into tribal leadership. All different acts that our lives change. Cultures throughout history have created moments and rituals to help that process. His thinking was obscure until the 1960s, when a much more famous anthropologist, Victor Turner, applied his concepts of liminality to social, political, and behavior sciences. And he said, in every field, there is anxiety in these moments when we leave one state and we move into another. And in every moment of our existence, whether it's in a small day, so religion, like Judaism, puts a mezuzah literally on the threshold to mark what it is to move from inside to outside, from one place to another. And sometimes those marks are found in all different forms. Religion often has religious services at the time of dawn. Shacharit, by the way, is supposed to be done, not at 10 a.m., when we like to do it, when we've been able to have a little, coffee. It's done shachar at the moment of dawn. Havdalah is done at the moment of the setting of the sun, that these moments of transition are profound. Adam and Eve leaving the garden, Joseph leaving. Throughout our Tanakh, we have so many examples of liminality, and sometimes they're deep pressure. Are people able to understand the sound? How's the sound doing? Okay? Back there, how are we doing in the cheap seats? Good? You guys good in the way back? You know what? Why don't we try to do a wave starting in the way back, okay? Let's just do that. Let's take a break. Start in the very, very, very back, okay? Let's do a wave. Start in the very back. Come on, do a wave all the way forward. Oh, beautiful. Yay, all the way forward, okay. Beautiful, thank you, everybody. It's a lot of power up here, It turns out that liminality is actually a place of great generativity. It's a place of great creativity. It's a place in which there is possibilities that can't totally work if you're in one place or the other. There's a way in which that movement that happens in the places of unknown, in which sometimes we can find the greatest truths. I mean, after all, look at the giving of the Torah itself. It didn't happen in Egypt, which was slavery, nor did it happen in the Promised Land, which was freedom. It happened in the most profound place that our tradition discusses, which is the liminal place of the desert. On one level, we look at it and it looks like it's all negative. It looks like it's only scary, it's only full of anxiety. And I love this one quote that I really love by Ed Catmull, who's the co-founder of Pixar. He wrote, "There is a sweet spot between the known and the unknown where originality happens. The key is being able to linger there without panicking." There is a sweet spot between the known and the unknown where originality happens. The key is to be able to linger there without panicking. So we are in a place of great liminality, both the synagogue, community, and me. And as I mentioned earlier, of course, I'm not leaving until summer 2024, and I'm not dying, so I'm not going to be gone, 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 but the relationship will deeply change. And the anxiety, I think that certainly that I feel, and I know some of you feel, maybe some of you feel a deep sense of relief, who knows? I for sure don't want to impose any particular set of feelings as we face this huge change. My challenge for myself, and maybe for us as a community, is to embrace this in-between space of liminality, not only with panic maybe, and not only with anxiety, not only with fear, but maybe we could also embrace it with some sense of excitement, that there's the possibility of generativity that we couldn't imagine, both for me personally and for the community. Maybe we can model this kind of leadership change in a way that catapults CBST into a glorious future that is as unknown today as what we could not have imagined CBST to look like when I came in 1992. Maybe we can actually embrace the possibility that this space of liminality can be a place in which we embrace the panic, embrace the fear, but also hold out for the possibility that, you know what? Change is good. Change can bring about things that will give us strength and life and possibility. One of the great teachers for me is a Franciscan priest, a father, an author, Richard Rohr. Maybe some of you know his work. He wrote, "God uses liminal spaces well. All transformation takes place in liminal spaces. We have to be drawn out of business as usual. We have to remain patiently on the threshold where we are betwixt and we are between the familiar and the completely unknown. There alone is the old world left behind while we are not yet sure of the new existence. That's a good space where genuine newness can begin. Get there often and stay as long as you can. It's the realm where God can best get at us because our false certitudes are out of the way. This is sacred space. The threshold, liminal space, is God's waiting room. Here we are taught openness and patience as we come to expect an appointment with the divine doctor. Now, part of what it means to have this space in this bein hashmashot, this in-between space, is to also recognize that we can't move through it too quickly. It's not that it's solved by assuming we can quickly jump to the next place. It's like the most profound teacher of liminality, grief, a teacher which teaches us that there is no quick way through except by feeling the feelings. There's no quick way to leapfrog over it, to get to the new, the better, the fancy, the shiny. It can only be done well if we feel the feelings, if we respect the past, if we honor the present, and we have hope and trust that there really is a future. 10 things were created, bein hashmashot, we're told by Pirkei Avot in this most miraculous of all the Mishnayot. It's just incredible. 10 things were created, bein hashmashot, in the twilight between the 6 days of creation and the 7th day of rest. And we're told that those 10 things are created by God so that they'll be there for us when we need them in the future. Well, we're now in the future. So those 10 things, the mouth of the earth that swallowed Korach, this miracle of the the pi ha'aretz, ufi ha'be'er, the mouth of Miriam's well, ufi ha'aton, the mouth of Bil'am's mule, Hakeshet, the rainbow, Haman, the manna, the staff of Moshe, the shamir, the text and the writing on the tablets of the 10 Commandments themselves, Mazikin, the evil spirits, the kever, the grave of Moses, which nobody knows where it is, but it was created then, and the shofar of Avraham Avinu. These things were created, and of course the rabbis are not settled with it. They have many arguments about, no, not this list, another list. Okay, for now we're just going to accept that list. So imagine this incredible concept that at the very creation of the world, things were created that were there to be left kind of as fossils, as miracles for us to discover when we needed them the most. They were created when? In this incredibly powerful moment of liminality, of God's own liminality, of saying creation doesn't just happen in those 6 work days, and it's not just happening when you're resting, but to embrace and to accept these times of liminality. And they're scary. They're scary for all of us personally. And I can ask, and I'm sure everybody has stories of where liminal space in your lives have been a place of terrible anxiety, whether it's a time of uncoupling or coupling, a time of leaving a job or taking a new job, a time of stepping out and off of the planks of your life that are clear and organized. It happens to kids all the time when they graduate from college or they leave school. Or they leave something anytime when we leave something or somebody that is sure and clear in our life and we don't yet know where the promised land is. We don't even know, in fact, if it exists. We are left with that sense of profound longing, fear, anxiety. But I believe it is in this space that this deep and great generativity will happen. So I'm nervous and scared, and we have no idea totally what the future will look like. But it is the right time for me to create space for another generation of leaders to come into CBST and to bring CBST into the next 50 years. CBST is finishing these 50 years this year, and I will be ending 32 years. These 32 years, there'll be much time, as Sabrina mentioned, in the spring, to reflect on the relationship we've had with each other and to think about the ways that it's changed all of us and to celebrate that relationship and to really look toward the future. So I urge you to come back in the springtime when we do all that. And now I want to end with some of the words from my installation, Drashah, which Sabrina made reference to. And I'm so moved to have here tonight our daughter Liba, who was 9 years old at my installation, Drashah, and she was there that night with many of you who were there. And now she's here with her husband, Micah, and their 2 daughters, our grandchildren, Zelda, who is almost Liba's age at that time, although a little younger, and Anya, who are here tonight. And they're done with the service. That's okay, that's all right. Enlarge the site of your tent. Imagine a CBST that is a training ground for rabbinical students from all the movements in the pastoral care of people with AIDS and their families. Imagine a CBST that is a center for Jewish arts. Our members are among the most talented artists in the city. Let us create a Jewish community that celebrates music, theater, literature, and our souls will be enriched. Enlarge the site of our tent. We must remain committed to a Judaism that insists that social justice is integral to who we are. We must not say enlarge the tent only enough to bring us in, but close it tight behind us. We must take our knowledge, our skills, our resources, and ensure that the disenfranchised, the weak, and the vulnerable will never be abandoned by this congregation of Jews. God demands nothing less of us. We must not stint. Enlarge the site of your tent. The possibilities know no bounds, but our foundations must be strong. Lengthen the ropes and drive the pegs firm. Our life and work together must be founded on our mutual sacred orientation, visiting the sick, comforting the bereaved, burying the dead, educating ourselves, observing Shabbat and Yomim Tovim, celebrating the events of our lives, and being involved in the great social concerns of our day. Enlarge the site of our tent, the makom of our tent. Makom means place, but it also means God. We must also always have the wisdom to remember that this site, this place, this makom of ours is a place of the holy ancient one of old. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the one before whom we all stand, give me the strength, wisdom, and humor to fulfill your charge tonight. Standing before this ark, on this day of the 14th of Elul, 5752, in the presence of my teachers, mentors, family, friends, colleagues, and students, I accept the honor of serving as your rabbi. And now to all of you, I say it has been the deepest honor of my life to be your rabbi. I look forward to this last year together in this role of me as senior rabbi. And as I said then, chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Let us go from strength to strength together. Thank you.